Once again, welcome to our AJA Lunchtime Live. I'm Kimberly Carroll. I am the Animal Justice Academy Director, and our topic today, using research, studies, and data to refine our animal advocacy strategies. And we have with us Brooke Haggerty. She's there in the corner.
Hello.
Yeah, and Bruno Link joining us from Faunalytics. So I just want to welcome you two. I want to welcome all of you sweet beings that are here with us live, and welcome to those of you who are watching the replay. I'm not sure, if you don't know the kind of advocacy you're doing is even working, or you need data to back up an initiative that you're thinking about doing or that you're doing, you're just gonna need to know about Faunalytics, okay? So for a lot of folks, talk of data makes their eyes glaze over, but today data is gonna be exciting, dare I say, Brooke, even sexy.
We'll do our best.
Well, I just want to give folks a little background on you, Brooke. So Brooke Haggerty has over 15 years of experience in the nonprofit sector and has dedicated her career to animal protection. She stepped into the leadership role with Faunalytics as an executive director in January of 2020 after serving as an operations manager for a year. Previously, she was the executive director and later as a board member for the Foundation for Animal Care and Education. She's also worked as a humane educator. I know we have some humane educators in the crowd, and later as a campaigns director for the Animal Protection and Rescue League. Brooke is a former board member and programming chair for the Young Nonprofit Professionals Network of San Diego. She currently serves on the board for Hands On San Diego, which promotes community volunteerism, which we love, and actively volunteers with her Alma Mater, a student mentorship program. In 2022, Brooke was named one of the 40 top business leaders under 40 by the San Diego Business Journal. Brooke has an MA in human behavior, a BA in English, and certifications in marketing and nonprofit management. Brooke, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. It's kind of interesting to hear it from somebody else. So thank you. It's really quite a joy to be with this group today. You all are so special doing important work, and I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, thank you for your time, Brooke. And, we've got Bruno up here too, and Bruno is going to be doing an actual, sort of presentation, giving us some nuts and bolts today. So why don't I introduce you to Bruno while you're here? Just a quick few words on Bruno. So Bruno is a portfolio manager and also a part-time ambassador for Faunalytics. He's also a proud vegan from Santa Catarina, Brazil, all the way from Brazil today, Bruno. We really appreciate it. Bruno comes from a family of animal farmers and grew up witnessing the cruelty of animal agriculture firsthand, which led him to become a vegetarian. And then when he was 19, that was when you were 19, and then you became vegan 4 years later. Bruno's now committed vegan, helping others transition away from dependence on animal products and abusive systems. Bruno, what a story. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Okay, so I want to just start, Brooke, before we let Bruno take it away. Well, I first of all have to acknowledge Faunalytics. You love the Canadians on your team. Liz Wheeler, you got Carl, you got Andrea, Pona. Like, what's going on there?
I know we do. While everybody was saying where they were from, I was like, gosh, are Bruno and I the right people to be here today? Because half of our team is from Canada. Most are on the east side of the country, so Quebec and Toronto and Ontario. Apologies if I'm mixing my provinces versus cities versus counties.
You got it.
I just know it's up there and it's cold.
Yeah.
But no, we like to say that we are on a mission to get all the best Canadians, which I know we have a ways to go to achieve that, but we really have some amazing team members, and
you can have any of the good Canadians that we don't have, Brooke. We'll allow
all right.
Oh, that's amazing. So Brooke, can you just give us a little idea of the origin story of Faunalytics? I mean, I know that you started with Faunalytics in 2020, but just, do you know anything about, like, was there a particular moment of frustration that made the founders of Faunalytics go, we need more data in this movement?
Yeah, so we were founded by Che Green in the year 2000. So Faunalytics has been around for quite some time. We were previously called the Humane Research Council, though. And this was before my time with the organization, but the lore has it that Che was a research manager for Microsoft by day. And so he was conducting focus groups. He was doing opinion polls and things like that, all to help a company sell its products. And he was an activist, by night, by weekends with the Northwest Animal Rights Network, I believe. And so he was like, why can't we do the same thing, but saving lives instead of selling products?
Yeah.
And so it kind of was very fortuitous that he had this career that he had and that he wanted to apply it to a great cause. So he and the folks up at that organization had this vision to create high impact materials that organizations around the country could use and customize. So getting kind of high impact, copy for the materials, whether it's brochures or leaflets or what have you. And then people can save on resources because they don't have to reinvent the wheel. But there wasn't any information on what makes an effective brochure or leaflet or anything we're using in terms of printed materials back then for our advocacy. And that was kind of how it started. Like, oh, we don't know what's effective. We don't know what imaging, what wording, what asks are going to actually resonate with someone who isn't already, one of us. So he identified that early on and had, at the time, this very visionary idea. There weren't as many researchers and groups in the space. So it's really cool to see how far Faunalytics has come, and what we mean to the movement is really special.
Yeah, you have become just a powerhouse for us all. Debbie says, I love how sophisticated our movement is becoming by having something. But it wasn't always that way. Why don't we have more data? Why do you think it is that we don't have more data in the animal protection and vegan movements? I mean, I have my theories, but I love to hear yours.
I imagine all of our theory is similar in terms of we're underfunded. We're underfunded, we're under-resourced. I think most people here know that animal and environmental organizations only receive about 3% of the charitable giving pie. And within that, I think it was a report from Animal Charity Evaluators a few years ago that said only about 2% of our movement's resources in farmed animal advocacy anyway goes to capacity building. So we're already underfunded as a movement. And then this idea of capacity building behind the scenes work is gets even less. It's, I know most of us involved in the nonprofit world, it's really hard to choose to spend money in areas we think are nice to haves. But I really would argue that research isn't a nice to have, it's a must have, because the money you're spending and the funds and the time that you're putting into your campaigns really should be informed. So that's what we're about, is filling that need, because it takes a certain, person, certain skill set, certain background, certain passion to be able to conduct certain research. And not every organization has a researcher on staff. Although it seems like that's kind of changing too. It seems like a lot of groups are hiring more researchers, which is very exciting.
Wonderful. Yeah. I mean, just from my experience in the 15 years of being an animal advocate, you're doing such scrappy things and with such lean teams.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, like, it's just like when somebody asks, sir, what are the stats on that? I'm like, when the hell did I have time to get stats? But as we're getting more sophisticated, absolutely. I mean, if we're going to do big things, if we're going to scale this, if we're going to make this, one of the premier sort of movements of our era, we need to work on this level. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get Bruno in here. So before, just give us a little bit of background, Brooke. First of all, what is a Faunalytics ambassador? This seems to be a role that is really important to the Faunalytics, because you're a really pretty small team, just like Animal Justice is, that packs way above their weight, right? Punches way above their weight. Yeah. So yeah, is this ambassador sort of a role one of those ways that you make it work?
Yeah, exactly. So we are a small team. Thank you for noticing. We have grown quite a bit in the last few years, but when I joined, there were only 4 of us, which I know we're lucky to have every one of us. But we've grown a bit, and we've been able to, thanks to a grant from Veg Fund, bring on a few ambassadors. So we started our ambassador project earlier this year with the idea that we are not reaching all the advocates we could. Faunalytics, there's only so many of us. We only have so much time to make connections in this movement. And there's a lot of awesome groups out there who have kind of flown under our radar. We have strong relationships with the big players, but the big players aren't the only players in the game. We are also important to this movement, and we don't want to overlook any advocate who might need our support. So we launched the ambassador program as an outreach initiative to get to the people we haven't gone to before, to say, hey, we have free stuff for you. We have free research, freely accessible data. We're here to help. It's our mission in life to help you. Please make sure you know about us and know about research. And the second part of the project was to embrace and support and cultivate new talent. You know, Bruno's been an animal activist for a long time, but is newer in terms of it being a career. And it is really, really cool for us to help support a few ambassadors who realize that their passion is more on this side of things than in the corporate world. But I can only guess if it's been meaningful for Bruno, but I hope it has. So twofold: reach out to the community and get to know people we haven't gotten to before, bring research to the broader community globally as well. A few of our ambassadors are extremely talented, smart, and multilingual. So we've reached people that have, been neglected by our work, and we're correcting that.
Amazing. So Bruno, I mean, here you are, a portfolio manager in Brazil, yet you have taken this on part-time. What drew you to doing this work with Faunalytics?
I mean, like you said, I have a background I grew up in a family of farmers. It is still a really conservative family. And for me, it was like a really hard process of accepting myself and understanding my origins and all that conflict world that I was living through, becoming a vegetarian and then later on vegan. And I do like numbers and data and research. And so for me, it was like, it felt natural to go for Faunalytics, as I love working with people that really take data so seriously. And I mean, it's just
You're a numbers nerd, aren't you, Bruno?
I'm a number cruncher.
Yeah. That's a nicer way to say it. Amazing, Bruno. Okay, so we're going to hand it over to you because Bruno's got like a real sort of tight presentation to give us like a really good primer on Faunalytics. And then we're going to come back to chat a little bit more casually and take people's questions. Okay.
Great.
All right, so I'll be sharing my screen here.
Go for it.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you all for being here and for your interest in Faunalytics. And today we'll talk a little bit about Faunalytics and who Faunalytics is and the importance of approaching animal advocacy using a data-driven approach. And I'll be showing you all the resources we have and how you can maximize the benefits of it all moving forward. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But starting with Faunalytics, who we are, like Brooke said, we have been going on for over 20 years, but our mission is to provide animal advocates with all the resources they need to become more effective in their ways to defend the animal causes. And we do believe in the effective animal advocacy, so we focus on farmed animals. But even though we do that because of the scale of animal agriculture, but we do have a little bit of resources for everybody in our website. We have anything like resources about all kinds of animals, like animals used for research, animals used in for food, or wild animals, ocean animals, all kinds. And we do benefit every single animal advocate. That doesn't matter what kind of area you work on or who is your targeted group of animals. But if you work for animals, we do have something to support your work. And I'll be showing you a little bit more about how we can do that. But let's start talking about impact and what impact is. And impact is the effect of a program, a service or intervention on the target population. And we as animal advocates, we need to make sure that the targeted audience, the people we're reaching to, they understand our message and they do what we're asking them to do, right? So in terms of that, we would be maximizing the impact of our campaigns. But but before we, to make that more clear, let's go for a few studies here, a few examples, and at the end I'll tell you if those were the best decisions in terms of maximizing the impact of these campaigns or these decisions. So let's suppose in the first example here, we all work in a restaurant that's adding vegan options to their menu. And in terms for those meals to make sense in the menu, they need to be ordered, right? So people need to be ordering them. And I don't know about y'all, but as a vegan, I love when I go to a restaurant and I see in the menu like the vegan section and all of the things I can eat is all there. So it's easier for me to just go and pick one of those. But, and then you think, okay, I love doing that. And that's a wonderful thing to do. And I think that would be the best way to approach this addition of meals in this menu. And that's what you tell your manager. You say, hey, let's do this. And so you put those options in a separate section in the menu, right? And in the second example, let's say we are all working on a campaign to get donations for a campaign against gestation crates. And we already worked on the material and you spend time and money already on it. And you have all the material already written down, and it says, it carries the message that says 10 billion animals suffer on factory farms in the United States. And then let's say a friend comes to you and say, hey, I think people would be more willing to donate if you focus on one specific animal, like an individual animal or a smaller group of animals instead of talking about 10 billion animals, right? And you think, hey, that might be true, so you think, oh no, I really need those donations, so I better go for what my friends say here. And you're like, okay, I gotta go back to the drawing board and spend more time in thinking everything again. And then you come out with this new message that says this sky, and you have a nice picture of a little pig that's suffering there, and it says she spent her whole life in a gestation crate, right? And you believe that will get more donations for your campaign. Moving on to a third example, let's say we're working on a campaign against puppy mills, and you want to reach the most people you can in your country. And in terms to do that, you think, oh, I'll go ask around my neighborhood to see what people think about this campaign, if they're willing to donate to this campaign or not. And talking to people in your neighborhood, you find out that 6 out of 10 people that said they are willing to donate, they are self-identified as men and they are older than 65 years old. So you think, oh, I should target this population, right? Because this demographic makes sense. And if all these people are saying 6 out of 10, so 60%, if I target this group, I will get a good the outcome will be quite positive after all, right? But were these the best decisions that we had to make to maximize our impact? So let's see each one of these examples. So in the first example, by separating those vegan options in the menu, we actually do know, based on a study, that that's not the best way to go for it, because according to a study, if you separate those vegan or veg options from the rest of the menu, they actually have a 50% smaller probability to be ordered. So it's not a good way to go, because people who are not eating a vegan meal or a vegetarian meal, they won't even go to that section. They will just stop in the food they eat, and they're like, oh, I like this. So the best way to go is to put all those options within all of the rest of the menu, so people will be ordering more. Because if you are already vegan or a vegetarian, you will find those options, right? You just put a little leaf next to it and we'll find it.
So good. Such good information, Bruno.
Yeah,
thank you.
So it would be better to just put with all of the rest. And let's see the second example here, by focusing in one specific animal rather than a whole group. So I should focus on the word probably, because you probably didn't need to change the material that you already had, because according to an original study that we did, both these both messages, the types of messaging focusing in one specific animal or a whole group, they are both equally effective in terms of getting donations. So you would have saved money and time if you just moved on with what you already had in the beginning. So that would be interesting here. And in terms of the third example, we do have a problem here about the sample size, because you only asked around your neighborhood, and that sample that you got there, it's not representative of your whole population, right? It was kind of skewed. Maybe you live in a more older neighborhood or something, and then you just got those responses. But in terms of sampling a group to get a whole population representative, you would need more people than that, and being less biased. And actually, according to a study, we know that people aged between 18 and 34, and the females are more prone to donate to animal causes. So in this case, if you focus on women and a younger population, 18 to 34, you would have been more effective in your campaign here. So this is pretty much the outcome that we got here. So in terms of this, what can we take out of this example? So the main thing here that I want you all to get home and to understand is that it's so important that you understand your targeted audience, and that you are not your public. You are not representative of the people you're trying to reach, because you are already working for animals. You already love them. I mean, you are biased, right? So you need to think on how those people will react to this campaign, or how a person that's reading this will react to it, right? And you need to understand exactly who is your targeted audience in this case. And also another thing from these examples that we can take, it's that we need to have a substantial enough sample size in terms of getting a good outcome for higher confidence levels and higher accuracy levels as well. So we understand that conducting your own research is time consuming, it's expensive, and frankly takes you all away from what you do best. Which is your advocacy work and working for the animals. But at the same time, we see that if we're not using research to figure out the best way to maximize the impact of our campaigns, we can even backfire and make decisions that will backfire and make your public to react in the whole opposite way, right? And that's not good. So I make the question here, where can we go from here? And this is where I like to present you all Faunalytics, because we do have wonderful resources. And if you really want to perform your own research, we do have a really complete research guide that covers everything from literature review, going to how to design a study and how to train personnel to get those responses from the public. And we have also a page about how to analyze those results, even though you do need somebody with some statistical background for that to be done, right? But there is some information on how to do it, on what you need at least. And a great place to start doing the literature review here is our library research. That it's honestly the world's largest library in terms of animals and animal advocates, because we host over 4,000 studies and summary of studies, and it's quite complete, and you find anything you're looking there, and it's really an amazing resource to have in hand. And another resource we have that's quite useful, it's our office hours, that if you prefer to talk to a person on a one-on-one, you have a question about, maybe you don't know if a study exists or you couldn't find in our library because there's too many studies there already. This is a great place to go, because you can schedule time with one of the specialists that are more into they are the people that are doing our original studies, and they really know more about what exactly we have in our extensive library. So that's a great place to go to. And so how to access everything I said, right? Everything I have been telling you, all of this is all for free, and it's in our website at faunalytics.org. But what else can we find there? And one other thing that we find in our library, in our website, is our original studies. And one recent study here that I'm gonna be talking a little bit, it's the global slaughter statistics that we do every 2 years. And we just recently published the most updated one. And it's quite interesting to see, because you can see those numbers, right? And we published in 2022, but it's about the up to 2020. And we know that in 2020, over 73 billion animals were slaughtered for food. And the majority of them, they were chicken. 97% of them were chicken, and they are over 70 billion animals, 70 billion chicken being slaughtered every year. And those numbers, the 73 billion, it's a little decrease from 2019, but it's actually still increasing from 2018. And that's pretty much like we can guess that is a COVID related thing, that there was a drop in consumption, but then it came back up, and it's still higher than 2018 if you compare those years. But other than chicken, we know that pigs are the second most slaughtered, and followed by sheep and cows. But in terms of per capita slaughtered worldwide, we have between 2018 and 2020, we saw an increase in chicken and fish per capita consumption, right? Not consumption, slaughter, sorry. And compared to those, we have a decrease in cows being slaughtered worldwide per capita. And pigs, there was a little movement that was caused by the swine fever from 2018 to 2019, where it dropped, but then it came back up again. But in terms of absolute numbers, if we see from 2018 to 2020, we found that there is an overall decreasing number of slaughtered animals worldwide, except for that of pigs and sheep. Sorry, and one of the most slaughtered animals here is again the chicken, right? So a second study that I would like to talk is about, it's also an original study. It's about the barriers and challenges of a vegan and vegetarian diet. And we found that the strongest outcome here is people's abandoning their diet, right? And within the first 6 months of doing it, most people said that they abandoned their diet because they were feeling unhealthy, with 30% of people doing that, compared to only 8% that abandoned if otherwise, right? People that didn't feel unhealthy. And the second strongest barrier here that we found was that people not see it as part of their own identity. So 16% of people abandoned the diet within 6 months because they didn't see it as part of their own identity. So there was some of that. And the third most found issue or barrier here was that people believed society saw it as a negative lifestyle choice. So with 13% of people abandoning it. But in terms of the strategies that can be helpful here, we found that cost reduction was the most successful strategy against the diet abandonment. So if you lower those prices, people will be still, they wouldn't be abandoning it so much. We found that motivational strategies worked well to lower animal consumption and as well to decrease diet abandonment. And although health promotion strategies, they didn't stop diet abandonment, they were good for people to cutting down their animal consumption amount and to help people getting closer to their vegan or vegetarian goals in this case. So that was also some good strategy. in this study, we recommend that new vegans try multiple strategies because they should do what best suits their lifestyle, right? And that's the most effective way to keep being vegan, is just try multiple strategies. Um, and finally, for us, like in terms in general, not limited to this study, and we should fight for food justice, because equal access to affordable and healthy food is a great way to lower those barriers and challenges of a vegan or vegetarian diet. So we should all be looking to work on towards that. Uh, Moving on to another resource we have, and that's, like I said, our library, research library. And like I said, we have thousands of studies there on nearly any animal topic, but one of them is this study that explores what motivates people to adopt vegan diets. Uh, and there are actually multiple studies that are connected to this one, like why children choose to become vegetarian, or the differences between health and ethical vegetarians, and how childhood relationship with pets can influence meat eating decisions. But in this one in particular, the author found that in terms of motivations to adopt a vegan diet, people said that 89% of them listed motives related to animals, and 69% actually mentioned motives related to personal well-being and health. So a little lower than related to animals. And 47% of people mentioned motives related to environmental protection. So it's a little even less than the others. But in the vast majority of respondents, 82% cited more than one of these sources. So people do have multiple sources for being a vegan or a vegetarian, and they seem to reinforce each other, right? And the studied sample was classified in different segments, and the results found that a number of significant differences between those segments, and as well as some similarities across those segments. And even though the study further described them and mentions everything more into detail, I won't go too far there, but they are pretty much differences related to people's age or length of time being in that diet, or their attitudes in terms of the animals and diet as well. But let me move on to another resource that we have, which is fantastic. It's our Faunalytics fundamentals. And here we present some key information and data in some infographics and some more in a more interactive visual and graphic ways that you can browse over the graphs, and numbers pop up and you can choose like different years or different type of different animal, for example. And we do have fundamentals on every single animal subject that we host. Is like, if you are looking for farmed animals information, or companion animals, or animals in social justice, wildlife, ocean life, animals used in research. And we also have one about zoonosis, which is an interesting subject as well. And here's just a couple of those graphs, like one talking about how with the passage of years, people have been slaughtering chicken much faster, and they have been growing so much. So it has all to do with hormones and how the industry has been doing it, right? And the other graph is about how the animals used for, what are the animals used for research in the US. And that's pretty much it. But we do have a big and wide number of infographics in this part. And I would like to mention again, this is getting to the end, but I would like to mention again our office hours, because it's a really interesting resource we have. And like I said, if you are looking for a specific study to a campaign, or you already found the study, but you don't know how to exactly use and put those numbers and that information into the real world, and change it and use it in a way that you can see yourself doing it, you can talk to a specialist that would help you do it. And or even like if you're trying to perform your own study, or like there are many ways that people can use our office hours, and like it's a great place for people to go, and I really recommend it. So I hope this wasn't too fast, but I didn't want to extend it too long. But I would like to thank you all for attention,
Oh,
and
thank you,
you can
Bruno.
thank you.
And so we've got some of the ways to contact, and we also will have some links for you as we go. Bruno, amazing. It was like you really brought it back to like what we need as individual animal advocates, or as groups as well. So that was like super, super helpful. Is there a study, Bruno, that you are particularly like are excited about? Like anything that you're like, that's come out recently, or that that's being done that you're excited about?
I mean, I think if I were to just pinpoint one, I think it would be hard. But I think the most important thing that I have been learning with Faunalytics throughout my job is that you really need to understand the people you're talking to, because the same strategy can work in different ways for different people. So it's like you really, it's the most important thing. Like, and you can take that to any part of your life. I think you can extrapolate those studies, and really,
totally. That's like the number one thing in business is you need to have your customer avatar, right? You need to know who you're selling to. And really in advocacy, we're selling an idea, we're selling a concept, right? And so it totally makes sense that we should really know what are the pains of these people, what are the goals and wants of these people, and we should really be thinking about that in all the campaigns, all the messaging that we put out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bruno, thank you so much. We're going to keep you around in the gallery, and we'll pull you in if we need to, but you go have yourself a beer, because that was a great presentation.
Thanks, Bruno.
Thank
Okay, so Brooke, some questions that were coming up, and you got an answer for everything, which is great. How, like for you, you've been with Faunalytics for 2 years, and there's 5,000 studies in your library. I mean, it must be overwhelming, like even for you. So it's really great. Can you sort of review again a little bit about, if you have an animal advocate that's just sort of got a vague idea, and they, where do you recommend they start? Do you recommend that they start in the library? Do you recommend that they book an office hour, like a time with office hours? And then what happens in those office hours? What do people need to prepare? Like, should they feel nervous about coming with a kind of vague idea? Like, do they need to be pretty prepared?
Yeah, I love that question. I love how thoughtful you and your group are. I've actually been with Faunalytics even longer, since 2018.
Yes, right. Operations manager. Yes.
Yeah, but the point being, I totally still get that we have so much information on our website that it can be almost too much, that we have information on pretty much everything and people don't know where to start. So I would encourage everyone to start with our library and use our search functions appropriately. So you can, search by something as vague or specific as you want, but then you can use the filters. So just like if you're shopping online and you're filtering out expensive things, you can use our library, filter out topics that aren't related to what you're interested in. So use our library, play around with it. Something to know is that we have started to, in our library summaries, because our library articles are summaries of external research. So when you dive into our library, you don't have to read a 50-page report every time you see something. What you get is a summary of that research. And then we've started bolding the key findings within our summaries. So it's not as intimidating as it might seem. You ideally find an article that interests you, click on it. It's a few paragraphs, and our newer entries have the bolded important stuff because we know how precious your time is. So start there, use our search function. We actually are going to be updating our website within the next year. So improvements to come. But for now, that search function is going to be your best friend, sifting through everything. That being said, we love people coming to our office hours. Our office hours are a newer program over the last couple of years, and we realized this is a huge part of what we do. We can't just publish research and then put it out into the world and expect it to make a difference. We want to be there to help advocates figure out, okay, what does this actually mean for me? I see this data stat, but what am I supposed to do with it? I'm busy. I don't know what to do. Or you want to conduct your own research. Or you just have a random question that you think Faunalytics might be the person or the group to answer this. So we have 3 office hour sessions per week. One is run by our content director who oversees our entire library. And then the other 2 are run by our research scientists who conduct our original research. So if you're looking for a particular data point, I would visit Carl, our librarian, a fellow Canadian, and he will help you. He's been involved in the movement a long time. I think, Kimberly, you know Carl from back in the day.
I know Carl very much. Carl's one of the OGs of the movement here in Toronto and Canada. So yeah,
if the data point is out there, he will know about it and find it for you. And then if you want to conduct research, you'll go to one of our scientists, Andrea or Zach. And to your question about how to prepare, have your question in mind. Say, I am looking for this piece of data, or I want to conduct a study on this. But don't feel like you have to be super prepared. We really pride ourselves in being approachable. So we are just people too. We all come from, boots on the ground advocacy backgrounds as well, most of us anyway. And so we've, to some extent, been where you are, and we know how challenging it is to do the incredible work you do. So don't feel like you have to come and impress us or know all the data or know even what kind of research you want to do. That's what we're here to help you with. So just come with your questions. No need to prepare. If it turns out that you need to come back to office hours, great. We do have caps eventually, but no one ever hits them. If people are coming every week, we got to help other people too. So just come say hi. And sometimes maybe you'll figure out you had a different question all along and it's revealed through your conversation with one of us.
And so just to be clear, the office hours are sort of like a group, like it's open, like they're just there on a Zoom and people drop in and ask.
Yeah, it's one-on-one though. So don't worry, it will be exactly. So if someone joins office hour, it's a Google Meet. You click join, and if the office hour is available, you'll be admitted. If it's not, you'll be admitted when it's open. Or if it's a busy day, we'll hopefully have time on another office hour. But it is one-on-one because it's really hard to get right to what people want if they feel like, oh, let me cede time to you, or I don't know if I should ask this in front of other people or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And what about, Brooke, what if people just want to browse and expand their areas of expertise? There's just such a wealth of information there. You've talked about, there's like some sort of crash courses on everything Faunalytics here, a couple of resources you have.
Yeah, so I would say what Bruno highlighted, our fundamentals are a really great crash course into different advocacy topics. So let's say you already know everything there is to know about farmed animals, but you don't know as much about animal and social justice issues and how they overlap. Jump to our fundamental, and the infographics that Bruno showed, they're just a clip. Our fundamentals are all really long. They're all long series of infographics. So that's great primer in terms of just information on causes. We also have our research library. We've started making it in video format for certain studies. So we have our Faunalytics Explains video series available on our YouTube channel. If you're the type that likes to listen and or watch as opposed to reading summaries, we got you. We don't have 5,000 videos, but we're working on it. So check that out. But in terms of, a Faunalytics crash course, I really think that reaching out to us to tell us more about what in particular you're interested in, we can then give you more of a personalized crash course. So if you reach out and say, hey, I really am looking for data on XYZ, we can get back to you and say, here's what we have, or here's what doesn't exist. Because we're people behind the screen. Our mission is to help animal advocates. So it's not a bother for us to spend time looking for data that you need. So just come to us and we'll give you a personalized crash course.
That is such an amazing resource. So, one of the studies that Bruno mentioned was that about what motivates people to go vegan. And I was really surprised by the 89% because I keep hearing from different sources in the movement that no, it's because of health, especially like with certain age groups. And if it's not health, it's environment, and animals is like way down there. So, that brings up the sort of topic of multiple studies. And so
Yes.
how do you deal with that with Faunalytics?
That's such a great question, because our research director, Joe, is always reminding all of us and everybody that you shouldn't just hang everything on one data point, that it's just one piece of the pie. And unless you've done research that's custom for exactly what you are doing and talking about, you have to bring in multiple data points and have a fuller picture that way. And sometimes research, it comes out and additional research is always better. It's always a researcher's dream to have other researchers continue the work we're doing and to have other studies build off of each other. But I would say in the point you brought up, what we think about more at Faunalytics, which is why we did a recent study on supporting new vegans and vegetarians, is what keeps them vegan. So I've seen a bunch of different reports, to your point, Kimberly. Oh, it's the environment. Oh, it's health. Oh, it's the animals. Oh, it's a documentary they watched. But that doesn't matter if they don't stay vegan.
Yeah, let's just keep them there. I don't care how they came here. Let's just keep them here.
So we do have a separate study on, different tactics and how they help or harm in terms of diet change. But I really think our research, our longitudinal research following new vegetarians and new vegans is much more insightful, because they're the ones who they've made that commitment, and we've got to keep them. They're the low-hanging fruit, and we are at risk of losing them if we don't address the different reasons that they fall off the wagon, so to speak. So the bigger answer to your question is always find as much data as possible if you can. Don't just find one study that serves your need and that skews it in the way you wanted it skewed. Find everything you can on that topic, as hard as it is. When we find that perfect data point to back up our point of view, it's a good feeling, but try to find as much as possible. And we'll conduct more research and get you more out there. Every year we're going to add to the collection.
Amazing. What's one study, Brooke, that you found particularly important to advocates that you've put out, like one that's really been popular and has felt important to people?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes our popular studies are the ones that people don't really like the answer or the findings. But right. I think that a particularly important study we did a few years ago on animal advocates in the movement and retaining advocates and learning about advocates' experiences and why they leave and turnover. I'm actually really glad we did that study, because to the point at the very beginning of this call, capacity building is very overlooked in our movement. And capacity building isn't just research, it's also things like taking care of your people. We all are at high risk of burnout. We're all doing very emotional work because we care quite a bit. And when you add workplace issues on top of that, it's no wonder that people leave organizations. So it's not as sexy of a topic. It's not about animals in a direct way, but if we don't take care of our people, we're not going to continue to professionalize and grow. And I've seen so much growth in the last, even just couple years. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's Absolutely. Just been incredible. And I'm really proud of the studies we do that take a behind the scenes look. What's going on behind the curtain. It's not just about supporting the public and getting public opinion. It's about, growing our movement. So I really
singing
like
our tune. You're singing our tune here, Brooke. We're very focused on making sure our animal advocates are feeling strong and resilient and supported. So I really appreciate that. You've done a study to back that up. Okay. I want to do a few rapid fire questions from our community. Debbie is saying, I was listening to an interview with a US advocate who said the American Midwest is about 5 years behind the coast in terms of progress for the animals. Do the stats bear this out? I would have to assume the same would apply to Canada. How can prairie advocates leverage this information? So I know you might not have this off of the top of your, but anywhere that anything that you have heard of or you could direct. Debbie around.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if the question is specifically talking about public attitudes and behavior or like legislative change in welfare, but either way, my answer is probably similar. I don't have data off the top of my head, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I would agree with what you've heard. That's probably accurate. Without knowing that I have the data to back it up, that's probably extremely accurate. So we actually have a study that is coming out next year looking at reduction targets by demographic. So essentially, if you're doing feet on the street activism and you're talking to a person from the Midwest, from the South, and you don't know what kind of messaging resonates with them, it would be very different messaging that would probably resonate with someone in, Quebec or LA. Basically, you need to know what is going to sound good to them. So our study is going to find out what messaging resonates with who, and we're going to create a web app to filter it easily. So essentially, if you are working in this geographic area and you're talking to young college students, we're going to find out hypothetically, oh, Meatless Monday is what you want to pitch. Don't pitch veganism, even though veganism is the ultimate goal. Pitch XYZ. Or let's say somebody else, it's more likely to be tractable if we pitch, reducetarianism or pescatarianism. It's not our end goal as advocates, but we have found through this research, or we hope to find through this research, that this ask is going to be the most successful in actually getting this person to change their behavior. So the app will help you customize it. And this goes back to the geography of the question. In terms of legislative change, that is something where we are just starting to do more research, and we hope to have more to guide you to actually make progress in those areas. But I will say, if you're not in the Midwest or South, legislative change locally still makes a difference because it can influence statewide legislation in other areas or influence citywide legislation in other areas. We just did a study showing that local ordinances and change matter because other people reference them and build on them in litigation cases. So keep doing the work you're doing, even if it's not the Midwest or not the South or not an area that might seem like it's as in need, because it does matter elsewhere, or can.
That's so promising.
Yeah.
Just to know that. So when do you expect to have this app out?
So that research we're in data collection now. And then research it's a process. After data collection is, we clean up the data, analyze the data, turn it into a report. So it'll probably be the end of Q1 next year, but I can hear my researchers now, and they probably want me to say beginning of Q2, just in case.
Yeah.
Give ourselves a little
That's right.
buffer.
Don't kill them, Brooke.
Yeah, exactly.
And so exciting. And just to hear, a piece of information that says municipal politics count, that is really huge, because municipal politics are so much more accessible for us as advocates.
Absolutely.
So that's really wonderful. Speaking of studies, here's probably one that was very popular because people didn't like the answer to it. And Jenny McQueen asks, one article from Faunalytics was critical of protest styles, for which DXC wrote a great counter article. I think caution is needed when using data for this type of thing, when sample sizes aren't really applicable. So was this one of the ones that you got some backlash for?
Yes. And, I really appreciate the work Almira is doing. It was great to kind of talk to her more when we published it and when DXC came out with that article. So the important thing about that study is to remember that we were specifically looking at diet change. So protests are incredibly effective in certain ways and if certain conditions are met. So when you take animal advocacy out of it, protests in general tend to be more effective if a few criteria are in place. One of them is it's better if there's more, if it's a bigger group. So one protester isn't as effective as large groups of protesters. A second criteria is that the public should already be kind of behind you on the issue. So it's a lot more challenging for a protest to be effective if it's what the public might consider more of a fringe issue. So that's something to keep in mind with protests. They can be incredibly effective if certain criteria are in place. And there's, I think, 2 other criteria that I'm leaving out. And then with our study, we were specifically looking at diet change and influence of diet change. We weren't looking at things like, did this raise awareness about issues?
Right.
There are a lot of ways that protests can be very, very powerful. And so we don't want advocates to walk away from that study thinking otherwise. But in terms of actually changing people's diet and changing people's animal product consumption behavior, that's where we didn't find the evidence backing the protests. That's where we actually found harmful reaction, because it wasn't just meat eaters and omnivores that didn't respond well to the protests. It was actually animal friendly people who also didn't. And that might go back to the other study Bruno mentioned about society's perceptions of veganism.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So it's something where, we really try to be careful about how we present research and what we say. And we thought a lot about that before it came out, because we don't want to do anything damaging to our movement. But I would say, think about the context in which you want to protest and set yourself up for success by making sure you have more people with you, by thinking about whether the public's already behind you. And there are animal issues that the public is already behind. So this isn't to say that it's only relevant to social justice issues, for example. So I would say just keep in mind the factors that would go into your success.
And that is, it's interesting because I just sort of skirted that study and looked at it and like, oh, but it didn't even sink into my head that it was talking about how to inspire more people to be vegan. I'm sure protests inspire a lot of people to become animal advocates, inspire people that are already there, so that's a different thing. If the study was about how do we create, more people passionate about animals, maybe a protest is it, whereas the veganism thing is quite a different question. So thank you for talking that out a little bit.
And I hate the answer being more research is needed, but more research is needed.
And that's fair. And that's exactly what Jenny's saying. She's saying, this is one sample size and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
And we need more on this. Like any topic that's worth exploring, it probably needs multiple studies.
100%.
So folks, don't give up your protesting. just to be, be nuanced and strategic about it.
Exactly.
Okay. So Brooke, do you mind? We have a couple more questions. Are you okay to stick around for a few more minutes?
It'd be my pleasure. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So someone is asking, Faunalytics sounds amazing and very much appeals to my number crunching brain. Perhaps this was mentioned already, but is it possible to go into, say, the library and use a tool there to make our own charts, graphs, poignant memes?
Oh, not at the moment, but
there's your next
you got
idea.
My wheels turning there. Whose idea was that? We'll have to give you throwback credit.
It was iPhone's idea.
iPhone's idea.
Name, so
that's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Not yet, but I'll keep that in mind. I'll talk to some people.
Beautiful. Somebody calling themselves watchdominion.com it says, any studies on effective strategies to get people who do not care to care about animals, climate, justice?
Yeah, you all throwing me some softballs here, huh? So we have a study coming up later next year looking at, this might not have been exactly what you meant, but in our 2023 agenda, we're going to be looking at how to, a couple things. Looking at conservative values and how we can try to get more people who identify as more conservative on the political spectrum to care about animal issues other than companion animals, because I think that's kind of the easy in for people on that side of the aisle. So we're looking at that. We're also going to do a study that I'm really excited about identifying opportunities for collaboration with environmental and climate organizations. So what opportunities exist to work more with advocates in the environmental space? There's so much overlap between farmed animal issues and environmental issues, but we so rarely work together as movements. So we see that as additional kind of low-hanging fruit. So slightly different. So Faunalytics might be focusing on a slightly broader answer to that question. But I'd have to look into what data is available in terms of like one-to-one advocacy, conversation starters, things like that. We have fact sheets on effective communication. So how to set you up for success when it comes to having those conversations and getting people to kind of listen to your messaging. There are certain times that are better to make your case than others. So are you being an effective communicator when you're talking about veganism? And I'd probably recommend that resource, which I can share with you, Kimberly, if you want to share with the group afterward, because that's going to be your best bet, is just thinking about communication as a whole. If you're talking to someone that you think might be open to it, but you're not sure, and you don't have, the information to say, well, I know that they're a 20-year-old liberal from this city, you might not have that information to get granular. There are strategies for being just a more effective communicator out there that are data backed.
Amazing. Okay, a couple more questions. You already addressed Carrie's question about citations in the chat. You addressed Jasmina's Veganuary question. There is, this is a good one. Deb asks, is there any data on the effectiveness of the topic of taxes, subsidies, bailouts going to support animal ag or laboratory research with different audiences?
Well, we are actually wrapping up a study looking at efforts in the movement to shift subsidies. So we originally went into this study wanting to identify how to end subsidies, but that kind of work isn't really being done. It's so difficult and challenging that most advocates in the space are working indirectly on the issue. So it was qualitative research with some people in the movement who are working on anti-Irish subsidy work, shifting subsidies. And that research will come out, I want to say, also in Q1, because we're in the report writing stage right now. So that's going to give some hopefully really helpful insights on what advocates are doing and what advocates see as the best strategy there. Because if we don't turn off the tap, it's really going to be hard to make all of this matter and all of this stick. So we hope to do more research on that, but right now I don't have any off the top of my head that comes to mind, but no research on shifting subsidies is coming soon.
Stephanie, who is watching our live stream on Facebook, had asked, how are you funded?
Great question. So we are funded primarily through individual donations and through grants. So Faunalytics is a 501c3 nonprofit. Just like a lot of you, we are a nonprofit and we have to fundraise for our work. So it's about 50-50 individual donations, folks like you who love what you hear and want to make it possible, donating a few dollars here or there. And then we also have grant funding from different foundations out there that support this work. And we are very transparent about who funds us. There's a page on our website, I think it's faunalytics.org/supporters, where you can see who our funders are. Because in research, we want to be as transparent as possible in everything we do. We're not the type to hide a stat because we don't like what it says or to keep it a secret if someone's funding us. We're very transparent about it all. So
yeah, excellent. Yeah, and you have a lot of studies that you've done for different groups, right? And so, if a group is wanting to do a full-fledged study with Faunalytics, how do they go about that? What's the first step? I know it's probably a long process, but what's the first step if we have a lot of organizers here and people that head up groups? So what would they do?
Yeah, so we don't do as much as we used to with organizations. So back when HRC was first founded, that was a lot of the work was doing research for organizations in the movement. These days we do, but it depends on a few things. Do we have the capacity, which we don't often do, unfortunately. But then we also want to make sure there's values alignment in terms of our goals as an organization. So is this a topic that we would probably do on our own if you hadn't come to us? And then the third is that we have the criteria that we want to publish it. So if you're an organization that wants to do research, but you're nervous about what the results might say, and you're not sure you want it to be shared with the whole wide world, we're probably not the best to partner with anymore because we want other groups to benefit. So we did a study, for example, with Farm Sanctuary a few years ago, showing that tours did lead to positive diet change. And that is helpful for every sanctuary working in this space, saying, hey, data shows that sanctuaries do more than just take care of these wonderful animals. They actually help influence behavior change. So if all that still sounds good to you, I would still start off by reaching out to our office hour, having a preliminary conversation, feeling it out, seeing if the research is out there already. And then if you kind of go through that phase and still say, hey, this research needs to be done, that's when you would get in touch with us. You can use our contact form, and our research director, Joe, would ultimately be in touch with you. But again, it does come back down to capacity. So please don't take it personally if we're not able to partner up. We would love to do research for each and every one of you. But do reach out, because you never know. And if we can't, we might be able to direct you to someone who can.
Okay, a couple more rapid fires. Barry is asking, if there is a questionnaire for your 2023 study on getting conservative-minded people to care about animal issues. I know a few people who may actually fill it out. Is there a link to the survey? I think you've already finished the survey part.
This one we actually haven't started yet.
Oh, okay.
So this study probably won't be conducted in that way. So there is some research where if you, for example, the study I talked about earlier with animal retention and studying people in the movement, we collected our participants via snowball sample. So, okay, we tell this person about it, that person tells this person about it, that person tells this person about it. But for the conservative values, that would probably be something where we need a representative sample of at least 1,000 across the United States. And if we do that approach, we wouldn't be able to kind of add participants. It would need to be done in a slightly different way. But I would say, if you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, please do so, because sometimes we do put out calls for feedback. Like we're doing a study looking at state-by-state reactions to potential legislative changes in 10 different states that advocates are working on legislative issues there. And we did put out a, hey, what do people want us to ask? Kind of call for input, saying, what issues are you curious about? What questions should we ask? And we took people's feedback and incorporated it into the study. So there's oftentimes examples of that and how you could get involved in that way. And if we are doing something where recruitment is where we need your help recruiting, we would publish that too.
Amazing. Sean asked very early on, or just expressed that they were interested in the idea of default plant-based and its impact. Is any studies that you know of around that so far?
I bet there is. There's
Okay,
got
so
to be research.
That's
on
an
that.
office hours thing,
That's
Sean.
Go to Carl for that.
Yeah,
one.
exactly. Perfect. And this one's really specific. So I'm going to probably guess office hours too. Robin's asking about the scientific definition of invasive species. Can an invasive species become naturalized? So that is really specific, really interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. So that's an office hours type thing.
That could even be, we could like write a blog about that too. There are some topics that need a little nuance. It's not just summarizing a research study. A little bit more is often necessary, and that could be one of them. We did just launch a research glossary, but it does not include the definition of invasive species. So that's something I'll have to share with my team. I'm interested in that, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Brooke, Bruno, Kirsten, if you can take us off spotlight so we can go back to the gallery and you can see we had, we went way over time and we still have quite a few people here, but we had
everybody.
Over 70 folks here live with us on Zoom at one point, and a bunch of more over at Facebook Live. Jody said we'll be teaching a course in animals in research and literature, and we'll definitely be accessing Faunalytics to back up the social justice approach. And Jenny said, superb presentation, great resources. Thank you. And we've got wonderful thank yous coming in here for you folks. Bruno, Brooke, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Faunalytics for this important work. It's incredible. And I'm so glad to know the ins and outs and nuts and bolts of this important resource. And AJAers, can you please pass this on to every animal advocate that we have this kind of resource to be able to use. And AJAers, can we give Brooke and Bruno a big AJA thank you?
Thank you so much, everybody. What a great group. We're honored to be here. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you all for being here. And we will see you in 2 weeks for our last Lunchtime Live of 2022. Stay tuned for the topic. I am just about to confirm it. All right, folks, have a wonderful day. Thank you, Bruna. Thank you, Brooke. Take care.
Thank you.